Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for attending the technical track. I want to talk in a bit more detail in this session. I think you've heard quite a bit of the MeeGo background overview. I've got a couple of slides to kind of re-emphasize that, but I won't spend a lot of time on that content. Talk in a bit more detail in terms of some of the key technologies that are in MeeGo that we've started implementing in MeeGo 1.0 and a lot more of what's coming in MeeGo 1.1, which is the release that we're currently working on. If you remember the roadmap slide from the previous session, project release, or kind of our final open source release, due in end of October. So very active in the development phase of MeeGo 1.1. So from an agenda point of view, we'll touch on the MeeGo overview content, and I'll maybe highlight a few things that we didn't talk about in the keynote and the panel session. Spend a bit of time and walk you through the MeeGo architecture. If you've been following MeeGo.com, we do publish architecture diagram and documentation on MeeGo.com. The version of the diagram that I'll share with you today is a bit newer, I think, than what's currently on MeeGo.com. So you'll get a bit of a sneak peek of what's coming in 1.1, some of the new things that haven't yet been published on the site, but will be soon. Talk a bit about MeeGo for developers. We've got, I would say, a fairly basic SDK that we did for MeeGo 1.0. We have a bunch of new things coming for the 1.1 SDK, so we'll talk a bit about that. And then roadmap and ecosystem. And I'll maybe cover a few things in addition to what you saw on the high-level roadmap, and then wrap it up with kind of summarizing the benefits of MeeGo for people in a variety of different industries and different roles within MeeGo. I will save, hopefully, some time at the end for questions. So as I'm going along, if you have questions, please do raise those at the end. So we've covered this pretty thoroughly, I think, today. Hopefully you've gotten the message in terms of, what is MeeGo. MeeGo brings together MIMO and Moblin. It supports Intel architecture. It supports ARM. And it also supports a broad range of vertical categories or platforms: netbooks, handsets, tablets, media phones, connected televisions, in-vehicle infotainment. Those are the current target platforms, and it's certainly possible that we'll add more over time, I think driven by people that come and contribute to the project, as we've talked about. It's a fully open platform in terms of the technologies. It's also a fully open platform in terms of what you can do with it. One of the key aspects of MeeGo is that it brings a standard API through the MeeGo core, which we'll talk more about in the architecture diagram. That's common across all devices. So whether you're building a handset or a netbook or a TV or a car, you know that you have a certain set of APIs that as an application developer you can count on and you can use, and you can build applications that run across devices. Of course, you can add things to the MeeGo stack, and anyone building a product would naturally do that. You can add additional open source components. You can add closed source components. From a MeeGo reference point of view, it's essential that we enable people to write closed source applications. Not everyone wants to give away their applications, of course. That's a choice you as a developer, you as a device manufacturer get to make. Do I want to do an open source application? Do I want to do closed source? So the licenses in MeeGo were chosen very carefully to make sure that for things that you need to use in your application, those licenses are chosen appropriately. So for example, Qt, being under LGPL, allows you to write, if you choose, a closed source application. You can also do an open source application. Another thing that we're doing in terms of proprietary add-ons is the way that we license the reference user experience. So you've seen the netbook experience and the handset experience. Those are licensed with Apache-style licenses generally, so that you can take them and build proprietary variations if you wish. Again, we want these to be a starting point for your development and to allow you the flexibility to contribute back open source contributions if you wish to do that, but also to do your own proprietary variation if that's something you want to do. So there is some broad license policies that are intended to support those usages that we think are important for MeeGo. I think I mentioned this a bit in the panel. In terms of the reference user experiences, these are not today being built for all of the vertical platforms that are mentioned up here. The main focus at the moment is on handset and netbook in terms of reference applications you will find at MeeGo.com. I do expect there will be others over time, but just be aware as you go and look at what's on MeeGo, you'll see different levels of reference user experience depending on the device type. We talked about MeeGo governance as well in the panel. I think the biggest thing I would say to you is if you're interested in MeeGo and how the project runs, I really would encourage you to attend one of the technical steering group meetings. This is really the place where key project decisions are discussed and debated. So that's something you can do very easily. The meetings are done using internet relay chat, so very, very easy to join. You can also, if you're interested in seeing what's happened in the past, the meeting conversation essentially is captured and archived. So that content is available for you to go take a look at. The other thing that's just getting started, as you heard, are the working groups, which really will be, I think, an essential part of MeeGo in terms of setting the direction. So you can kind of think of the working groups in a way as the product marketing arm of MeeGo. So really driving requirements in terms of, for example, what should MeeGo handset look like in terms of its capabilities and its functions in the next version. So bringing focused requirements from the people that are contributing to MeeGo. So that's one part of the working group. And then, of course, members actually contributing content to achieve those requirements. So we're very interested, for example, if you have a strong requirement that you think, MeeGo needs to do this to be successful in the market. That's valuable input, and we really want that. What we would like even more is for you to come and say, MeeGo needs to do this to be successful in the market, and here's my contribution to get that started. So, there's value in both of those. If you can bring a requirement and bring an implementation, that's the best. And I think that is also the way, if you want to become an influential member in MeeGo over time, bringing requirements and bringing contributions is the right way to do that. Because MeeGo is, as an open source project, it's really driven by the people that contribute the most, ultimately, in terms of technology and in terms of resources. I want to talk a little bit more about MeeGo compliance. I think we touched on it a bit earlier today. This is something that's, we're in the process of building and bringing out more information on it. The focus of MeeGo compliance is application compatibility between devices. It's extremely important that we can give to the application developers a promise that if they write their application so that it's MeeGo compliant, they can be assured that it will run on any MeeGo compliant device. And there's a little subtlety there in terms of you can write an application for a specific category. So for example, you could choose to write an application to be MeeGo handset compliant, or you've really targeted it for the handset. Or you can choose to write an application that's broadly MeeGo compliant across any device. And they're very close to each other. The difference would be within each of these device categories, as we'll talk about a bit more in the architecture slide, there are some additional components that you can take advantage of. So that's a choice that the developer has. But it's a mechanism to ensure that if you write a MeeGo handset app, it'll run on any MeeGo compliant handset. Or if you write a generic MeeGo app, it'll run on any MeeGo compliant device. If we don't deliver on that promise, we'll never get scalability in the application ecosystem. Because every time you write an application, you have to validate it and maybe change it a little bit for each device. And that simply won't work. So that's really the goal of compliance. Compliance is for applications, and it's also for devices or software distributions, if you will. So you could be, for example, Novell with their SUSE Linux product. They can be MeeGo compliant on that piece of software, or somebody that constructs a device, say a handset, could be MeeGo compliant for that device.